From Matters Smoke the week, let us now get into the way it is. A very good morning to you. We're glad you're watching Morning Express. I'm Sophia Wanuna, and joining me in studio is Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar and lawyer Ambrose Weda to analyze some of the stories we've been covering for you this week. And want to begin with the shoot to kill order, gentlemen, before we get into some of the stories, even some captured by Wilson Borough there. Against in regions that are pastoral regions, Baringo, there's Turkana. What are your thoughts? Because this has been an ongoing problem. There seems to be no solution to deal with it once and for all. And shoot to kill sounds desperate and could get out of order. What are your thoughts, Omar?
I think you're right. It does sound desperate, and not only is it desperate, it's illegal, unconstitutional for the Inspector General of Police to assert in the ways he did assert. But I think in my assessment, this is security issues or issues that I dealt with quite a bit when I was at the KNCHR. Mm-hmm. You know, there's almost a direct correlation between security and development. For sustainable security, you need development. And therefore, it's very important to relatively see how we can bring development closer to these areas, mm-hmm. so that people can be given alternative sources of employment and livelihoods. Because I think the part of the wrestling as we traverse some of these areas appears to be an inbuilt culture, mm-hmm. and that's why you have this district committees and security committees and matters of that nature that constantly try to mitigate, bring these warring communities together, bring the provincial administration or the security apparatus together, bring all these the leadership of the various formations, and therefore it is important to have a very concerted effort to first and foremost also debunk this myth about the cultures that border towards insecurity, like rustling. Mm. Take these youngsters to school, make sure that we create avenues for education, and these were some of the areas that we discussed quite enormously. But then yes, then the government has to increase its presence, because I think these areas, based on the levels of insecurity, have become fairly difficult also to manage in terms of the vast areas that almost barren land, almost we have no development or particular livelihoods. So I think in the totality, government needs to work to have a framework of how we can increase security establishments. And I do remember there was a time where we thought also the home guards arming some of the civilians could maybe sustain security, but we have seen at certain points where some of those home guards will turn those guns against people from the other communities who they allege to be undertaking to this lawlessness. Mm. So I think it requires a comprehensive plan. And as I said, I've said it here before, I sympathize a lot with the IG, because I know that the intricate situation he's in. But that cannot be justification to me, because you see, they're opportunistic kind of police officers out there. And then once Wakili here will tell you, violence beget violence. You kill one, then there's an act of retaliation, mm-hmm. and then there's another act of retaliation. And I think we need a comprehensive engagement to ensure that we mitigate some of these factors.
But whether attempts to get those engagements going and for them to bear fruit have failed in the past, and these are failures that we've seen not only with government but also local leaders and communities just not coming to a place where they can agree, and the problem continues to escalate, and shoot to kill will definitely not solve the problem.
I think as a country we will have to bite the bullet and have a comprehensive policy on keeping especially many of these worthless cows and goats.
Oh gosh.
I dare say so, because most of these are not kept on commercial basis. They are kept either for love for cows or some belief that God gave people cows.
It's a sign of wealth.
It's a sign of wealth. As a country, we need to do a proper census of the cows and the goats and all that we have. Then we need to map them out. You see, if you look at the commercial cows, if you go to Delamere and you steal those cows, they will be found. If Senator takes them to Mombasa, Kilifi, inside the Kiabombo forest, mm-hmm. they will be found, because they have been marked, they have been mapped, they are known. These are our kienyeji cows, the village. And why do I say
But is that the solution? Because you also have proliferation of small arms being another question.
Yes.
Disarmament never working out.
I'm looking at it as a comprehensive approach.
Okay.
Take, for instance, a bull goes for about 30,000. That bull is about 6-7 years old. What business is it? What investment is it that you take care of on a daily basis for 7 years to get 30,000? You get it? Take into account the environmental degradation, all this. But before we reach there, we need to map and mark this cattle.
Okay.
And then we know this cattle belong here, this one belong here. The shoot to kill order appears to me as a last resort. But to how far can we go? It has never worked. The shoot to kill order has never worked because the dead people tell no tales. People settle scores. I can come and say this was a this was a cattle rustler. It was there during the late President Kenyatta's time. So 50 years down the road, we need a slightly more comprehensive approach. And I believe we must relook at this our kienyeji cows.
Okay.
As a country.
But you use the word failure. That I think failure might be a very heavy word, because I am aware that quite a number of times, even when we participated in some of these peace committees, a lot of these fallouts were either averted or we were able to be
but
to be
temporarily
handled.
the problem keeps recurring.
Absolutely, but they are one-offs. These are one-offs, because you will find that for a long there will be a big a period of lull, and then poop. There's something drastic that happens, because at times, and again, in fact, there was a point at which we were in pursuit of cattle. At that time when Ken said, not in the physical sense, but we were being given feedback because they were trying to demonstrate to us how that process works. So the cattle were eventually found. They were returned back to the community that was dispossessed or they were stolen from, and then a fine was levied. And in reciprocity, they paid an extra 1 or 2 cattle to compensate. So I think somehow the informal structures and the formal and informal structures have worked to a large extent. But now to deal with this recurrence is one-offs, which sometimes devastate an entire process, is what we need to put measures for.
All right, let's stay with security across to Lamu County. The Inspector General has extended the curfew there. It's been in place for 3 months, 1 more month, and the leadership has come out and disagreeing to some extent. Some say no, it should be lifted because of the economic repercussions that the county is suffering and all, loss of jobs and the like. And others argue that until arrests are made, following the attacks there, then there should be a curfew ongoing. What are your thoughts?
I really think that the question of this curfew should involve both sides. It should involve the political leadership, the business community, and the police. The business community, the political leadership should understand that if the insecurity issues are not properly handled, they will have no business. Now, the security agency should also realize that they are trying to protect people and protect business. It should be a joint approach. 3 months down the road. Yeah,
doesn't that appear that the security is clueless of what happened?
I think it is long. Either somebody somewhere is not doing his job properly and is not getting to the root bottom. Lamu is a small area. Even if you have to physically count and talk to individuals, it should have been over. So I think they should rethink. It's not a question of curfew.
Yeah, because for how long can you have a curfew?
I think it's extreme. Extreme. It's punitive. It's extremely punitive. And in fact, whatever the objectives of the attackers, not only did they instill maximum damage to property and take away lives, they've now been able to sever the economy. Cast Lamu in a manner as to
the festival
deter.
there was cancelled.
Exactly, to deter even tourists. So I think in our planning, I think we need to be a bit more sincere, because there are areas in Lamu, like the island, that I think should have should have been allowed to go on with its own activities, the historical sites itself.
Right.
That it is so a condemnation, a collective punishment of the entirety of the people of Lamu. And there are areas that we know we can earmark or map out as being insecure, the Boni Forest areas and certain areas that we will want to continue to extend our operations. And but to just blanketly, punish a society or a community, I think I think there are positions that have been taken. The Lamu leaders, I think, I totally am on the side of the Lamu leaders on this matter. We hold the government
but even
totally.
they are divided.
They are divided on account sometimes of partisan interest, because there are those who feel they owe an obligation, in a certain political context. But the majority of the Lamu leaders are speaking from one voice, and I think sometimes in the democratic discourse, the division doesn't know. In Kenya, the definition of division is quite interesting. You will have two people from a list of who dissent on an opinion, from a list of maybe 30. And we say people are divided. It's not divided. There are two people with a divergent view. And I think that the majority of the view is that, and I think what has happened, it is as it has been put by the analysts, that it will harden and now radicalize even further. If you read that UN report damning about quite a number of those youngsters who joined the ranks of the Shabab and other radical organizations who were interviewed by the UN agencies, who were asked what was your catalyst for joining the ranks of the Shabab or these radical forces, and they said the government's approach towards the Muslim community. So you radicalize them. They feel there's that general feeling of marginalization, humiliation, subjugation, and you continue to water that narrative in a manner that is very adverse to even the sustainable security.
Okay. Away from that, some drama, Senator Bungoma County, Moses Wetangula versus KQ, and the setting is JKIA. Should the airline apologize to the senator as he's demanded?
I think, although Honorable Wetangula is on the other side, so our side should be celebrating when he has stipulations. But as a country, I think identification is not a document. Identification is the ability to be known that this is called Sophia Wanuna. Just a few months ago, we had several Somali people who had crossed into the country and they had IDs. And they would flash those IDs and their new IDs. The police had to go behind that ID so that they'll ask you, who is Raila Odinga? Where does he come from? Who is this? Then now these strangers realize they don't know. They tell you Raila Odinga is some young man in the village. Then they say, this one. So what they did to Wetangula, even the ID they were looking for must have been issued 15, almost 20 years ago. If you look at my ID today, the photograph on that ID, if you look at me and that ID, we are totally different. Okay. So these are people, these are senators, and you can see this is Wetangula having been the other side. And so what KQ did was to take advantage of a regulation in a way, in a mischievous way. You understand? To humiliate him. They should have known that this is Wetangula. Although you don't have your ID, we know you are Moses Wetangula. Get in. We don't do business like that. I have been there myself without the ID. Sometimes I use
but with
other
that,
things.
Should that be then what, yes, that happens, they will know you, but even if they know you, many will argue that it should be the same treatment across the board, because maybe one would have faulted KQ for first clearing him and then going inside the aircraft to then ask him to leave after he'd already been cleared.
I think there is something called logic. As human people, you're endowed with a certain intellect, and you're supposed to apply it in situations. Rules there being, that's why even in law we have the how reasonable was the decision in the circumstances? How reasonable was it? Here you are, here you are. Assume the young lady is totally a nut who has no idea what happens in life. Who has no idea. She watches no TV. She reads no newspapers. She just goes from the KQ check-in desk to her home.
But even if they know
assuming there it is. 3 senators identified Moses Wetangula. Who had their ideas. Mutai Kagwe and the rest were there. The Speaker of the House of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of the National Assembly identified Wetangula and pleaded.
But those are not the regulations that Sophia has come now. My best friend should come and identify and say this is Sophia.
On a reasonable
but now the reason versus practice and what is the rules and regulations and how they conduct their business.
I can tell you for a fact, whatever they did, whether we want to just humiliate Wetangula or bring this, Kenyans always feel there's somebody big there wanting to show off. We have these complexes about who that kind of thing. He is Senator Wetangula, let's face it. Yeah, and unfortunately or fortunately, every casual pedestrian knows him. So I think what you need, as the process of identification sometimes will have been to verify. Wetangula had put his ID. I asked him yesterday, the day before yesterday, when I got to Mombasa. It was in his car that drove to Mombasa. He had shown every identification possible in his pocket. Every identification possible in his pocket. In a reasonable test, that was totally unreasonable, totally out of tune. These rules. It's like a pilot saying that if he's flying and something could happen, you will apply a certain reason. That's what experience is all about. That's what reason is all about. And I say, I'm just not about Wetangula. It's about being reasonable. And it could have been any other Kenyan. It could have been Kenyan in the private sector. It could have been Shoshole, the CEO, Standard Group.
So in that situation, you'd have wanted what? The anchors to go and identify?
No. Assume there is somebody there who has authority, who can reasonably come and say, I believe this is Shole. Yeah, I know him, and he takes responsibility.
So should that be the way KQ operates in situations where passengers choose not to have documentation? It is clear already.
One passenger, and the passenger
but that doesn't change. Allow me to be the devil's advocate here,
be the devil's advocate, but don't be the devil. but because in this
Senator,
regard, let me tell you,
you cannot say that then vouching for people will be the way.
No. Listen, why finally? Why finally? Ask yourself, why finally did the same aircraft take off without Wetangula having the ID that was asked for? Because somebody somewhere with logic, and reason.
Did they say that they were able to get some documentation to him at the airport?
So finally was able to make that judgment. And I can tell you for a fact, if it's about pictures, he talked about, if you want to have something that has pictures, I pass by that airport every day. I always have my ID and I show it every other day. Assume there's one particular unfortunate day, you have forgotten it. Can somebody apply reason, one-off?
Let me tell you this. First, there is no rule anywhere that requires you show your ID either at the airport. The ID, if you look at the relevant legislation dealing with the ID, you're only required to register. Do you understand? To register. If you fail to register, it's a criminal offense. But showing your ID all over, there's no such, and it is not there with the KQ. Number one. Number two, it shows.
Well, they said it is there. They even put up an ad that ID or a passport.
It is where?
They put it out yesterday's newspaper. Yes, they put it out to clarify that
advert in both the quarter page in both the Standard and the Nation.
Just clarifying that for all their passengers, before you board, this is what is required. So that's their practice. That is their requirement. Those are their procedures. So who are we then from outside to come and say, oh, you guys should be more just reasonable. Forget your procedures.
Just listen. Assuming they had put that, the ID is meant to identify people that this is so and so. It is not a ceremony. It is not a ceremony. It's not for humiliation. What they did, and knowing very well that Wetangula is on the other side. You see, sometimes we do things. Wetangula is on the other side of the divide in this country. This country is divided between CORD and Jubilee, and the blood is not. There's bad blood. There's bad blood between them. They're looking for any small thing to incite their supporters. Then you get to Wetangula on a small thing, in a national airline perceived to be on the Jubilee side of the government, then you do all those things. We are actually creating bigger and bigger barriers between us as a country when we should be considered all seriously. I think what KQ did was very wrong, and I would tell them that was wrong, that was a mistake, that was humiliating a national leader, and I wouldn't miss my word. And if I was the boss and it was my private enterprise, I would deal with you.
Okay, let's move away from that. We'll wait to see if they'll issue an apology. He did say he might seek
apology,
legal recourse
apology dealing with the lady is extreme. But what I think is sometimes there's reasonable judgment. Everybody under the moon will appreciate.
The only problem I have with that argument, Senator, is that if then that is used every single time, whilst perhaps in that particular situation there were mistakes made by KQ, first clear him, then go to the airplane and tell him to disembark because he didn't have identification, that many have criticized as a flop. But to then say that people should be reasonable, you cannot throw out, it's just it's like the law. It's like saying, this was my father's land.
These are regulations. These are regulations. This is a one-off. This was a one-off.
But then when someone else would argue, and this can be another one-off, when do you then draw the line and say, on these situations, it's allowed, it's okay?
Listen,
that's the thin line that will be very blurry for most people.
What just the Wakili said, the process of identification itself might not just be a physical ID. There are various
people can
ways.
Come and identify you.
Yeah, I mean,
when you're voting,
let's go it this way.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who asks the president? Sure, as you
that is the president.
But because we is the president, because we identify him as he walks in, you say,
well,
that's
he has
the
his own plane, doesn't he? I don't
sometimes he uses all the time.
When he's going to the Hague.
No, he uses one thing. The president does. He uses the carrier quite a number of times.
But not with passengers.
Leave alone even with Angola.
What do you mean passengers? They're passengers. When the president, what they do is when they book the commercial airlines, they will just have some rearrangement, and maybe the sitting, you will not. It is unlikely that if you're a private paying citizen, you will sit on the same seat 1A and 1F. No, that will probably not happen.
Let me even tell you. I don't even think when Raila was coming back or when he's going, anybody dares to ask him, show us your ID. Let's not posture.
Point made. And speaking of Raila, he came back.
Yes.
And some senators are now arguing that Raila clearly appears to come out and be the life of code. That whenever he's away, loud, no activity, nothing much happening. Is when he's back, then again you see activities rising, more energy, reinvigoration of the team and their push. Is that correct?
Sophia, it depends on what prism. Definitely, Raila is the most visible of all the CORD politicians, and also more precisely of all the CORD leaders. Both your newspapers yesterday gave him a headline. Both not your newspapers, but the national newspapers, The Standard and The Nation. And based on an interview inside, almost both of them, they asked Raila one or two things, and they were both headlines. It's not easy to get a human being who outside even power or government is able to make that kind of headline. And I think based on the profile you've created, so therefore it only appears to move when he appears to take certain things. But also on the alternative, every other time you cover an event, it is either Ruto or Uhuru Kenyatta. Even if you put other senators like my brother Murkomen and my brother Kindiki, but they will be talking on a platform where the deputy president is, where he's going to do a certain issue. You will find them traverse on their own. But that's said and done. I think what has happened is most of the times some of the major events target the presence of the core principles. So therefore, you will have so many other incidental events that are happening. Mombasa, we had one or two activities over the weekend, but then you will find that possibly this weekend the whole CORD brigade will be in Mombasa. Therefore, there will be a bigger profile of that particular event. But definitely, because of the kind of gravitas he holds, it always appears. And before the time when he was in the United States, there was a lot of us moving around this country. If you realize the momentum that was made, that came up, even for the Baba while you're away, welcome rally, it was basically people who, we were in Kibera, we were in every other place to raising the profile of the coalition.
I think, let me tell you, he is the only person, I think, with gravitas If you take the other two core principles, take Wetangula himself, very busy with small things like IDs. Somebody should have been organized. You have your PA, you have your private travel documents, all of them, the passport, the IDs, all of them, and your PA going and saying, the core principle is coming, clear the way. Now he's busy with small things like my ID, my what. Kalonzo on the other hand is busy jumping up and down on Senator Mudama, some MCS. So even critical national issues like the NGO Act and so, they are not there because they lack it.
No, but Kalonzo, if you've read that story, Kalonzo has commented on that story.
No, it's commenting too late.
No. But
it's commenting too late after people, one has been beaten up and guns have been fired. We are simply saying this. Raila also, on the other hand, Raila also knows the theatrics he plays. He comes in, he rubbishes what the president has done because he knows that is what sells. That's what will give you national status. It's a whole kind of drama and theater. But now when the choral leader on the Raila is not there, these others are lost.
So you have the likes of
maybe if I had my brother Senator Omar, he also knows the theater. He would keep the tempo. But wamemweka chini kabisa.
You have the likes of.
Say that niko chini bana. You see which position, which view
let's
are you
move
looking
on
at
to
this
what
whole
you're
issue?
hearing from some quarters of court led by Onyonka.
Also, you don't have to realize.
Yes.
If you are co-principal, I know it would be a game changer. But these others,
let me tell you. Let me stand here, speak in defense of my party leader. You see, we also have.
But we're not saying he's erred. We're just saying the rest of everybody else in court.
No, but party leader is Kalonzo Musyoka.
Okay, sorry.
No mistake.
I need some games on him. Honorable Raila,
there were no games. I probably did the games. So that's it and done. He has been. Sometimes you schedule something, and unfortunately, he's out of the country.
He got a job,
because he's been doing a few things, which I think also a bit border on personal development, border on making your own contribution in your own capacity, and I think that we need to appreciate. But on every matter, his firm, and when he came back, he knew that there were certain certain issues, and I can tell you for a fact, I think he's on top of most of these issues. We're in communication with him. He knows what is the next.
Perhaps he may be on top of them, but to you, insiders, outside, he seems to be taking a back seat, not very vocal, very busy with his other work. But let's move on to what we're hearing from Onyonka and other members who feel that come 2017, perhaps Raila should step down, back somebody else. They're feeling after three stabs on the presidency, he should call it a day.
That's an opinion, like many other opinions.
You are quoted as saying he's a more in one of the dailies yesterday.
I say, you see, the thing is, you look at Onyonka plays with both his feet. And his foot, but one of his foot is deeply in Jubilee. So I think what happens is
just because he has a divergent view, as you said.
If you look at the political character in terms of how Onyonka has carried out his business in the last 18 months or since we got elected, it is doubt. All the positions he's taken have gone totally ultra-biased to the party, and we know who his camaraderie and his friendships are. But that said and done, if we'll be sincere, if let's say a code, for lack of a better word, a genuine code supporter, as for instance,
Hassan
Omar says
there are more. He's not the only one.
Hassan Omar says maybe it's a high time Raila took a backseat. Then that will be worthwhile.
But he has
what happens? I can tell you for a fact. My own view is you do not disqualify people on account of how many presidential elections they've run. Abdullahi Wade, we were almost giving up on Kibaki. So therefore, these things do happen, and I think it is flimsical to raise that type of tempo, particularly when we know what your agenda is. But that said and done, I think let the party intra-party dynamic be able to sort itself out, and if it is in our view that the best candidate for the coalition is Raila Odinga, so be it, in terms of giving a fairly credible onslaught on power. in 2017. But if there's a general view, and I think
your party leader has expressed interest,
yes,
would you back him?
And if there's a general view, I'm saying that within the party rank and file or the coalition rank and file, that is high time, and that through the processes where there's a total where the coalition moves as one, that it is time now for Raila Odinga to back one of the candidates within the coalition, then that also will be a position that the party
So right now you wouldn't say perhaps Raila should leave it for your party leader to also have a go at it?
Everybody, I think Wetangula has a right to have his ambition burning. Kalonzo Musyoka has a right to have his ambition burning. Raila Odinga has a right to have his ambition burning.
Of the three, who would you have for 2017? Just on your own merit.
For me, I prefer the same ticket we had.
Okay.
So that's said and done.
Let's hear from one.
Sophia, I can tell you, running for president is big business.
Yes.
First of all, you raise almost $1 billion, $2 billion from the candidates. You charge them 200 for the ticket. Then it's big business. And as a business, I don't think Raila, being a senior businessman, is just about to let that kind of business to go. But if you are to look at it rationally, especially coming from the Luo community where I come from, and they come from there, is a party at the lake. He's right there, but no new leaders are coming up. Yet he can clearly see that he had his best chance in 2007. Then other younger leaders, Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, Mheshimiwa Ruto, came in and thrashed him round one. He still insists, and the chances, because these are mathematics, this is not magic, it's not about throwing cowrie shells, it's about mathematics. If you have these people and these people and these people, my view, it should have been time for him to start nurturing other new leaders who will then run against Honorable the governor of Machakos County, Peter Kenneth, the deputy president. But if he insists again in the hands of Uhuru, he loses again round one, there are no new leaders, it is unfortunate. But for now, I think is a better bet for the court, because the other two would be mincemeat. If you are to bring Kalonzo Musyoka, it would be, the gap would be too big.
Not.
If you are to bring Wetangula, his ID may even be missing at the IEBC, it would be maybe disqualified.
If the base is caught,
yes,
it will matter little who is the presidential candidate, because that the vote will be sustained. So if Raila can win with the court base, then Kalonzo Musyoka will equally win with the court base, and so will
But the majority of the support, some would argue, is really by the merit of Raila, the man, the politician.
I know that
not the entire court.
You know, one thing somebody once told me: political support is not transferable. It's like you cannot say ni mimi lakini namwachia huyu. So people will say now you give people a definite.
You actually know it. That's how you went at one on
you code. My brother code. So that's said and done. I can tell you for a fact, Mombasa is called, and any other day, tomorrow, the day after, this evening.
But the governor is quoted on the Stars having said that if the
the governor is my friend. I can tell him for a fact, if he is really thinking about a Jubilee move, I think it would be a big mistake, fatal mistake, even to his own political career. Fatal.
All right.
And I think he knows it. So I think this is part of, that's why these days I'm very curious.
I can give you
I'm very skeptical with which meetings you attend. You go into a meeting before you realize there's a scoop out there saying how Sophia Wanuna, Ambrose Weda was talking about another party. Somebody somewhere spins the media with respect to trying to perpetuate a certain agenda. So then what it does, it calls you and says no comment. Oh, Sophia refused to comment. So did Ambrose Weda refuse to comment. But an insider said our sources indicated, and before you realize, you've spinned a piece of propaganda. Without so you look at it as propaganda. without the necessary diligence. Propaganda in this regard. Sorry, yes. The propaganda in this regard. Joho is a conscious politician. So are we all. I can tell you for a fact, if you attempt a run in the Mombasa County, outside the framework of court, you will lose.
It would be disastrous. So the former PM comes back and also reigniting debate on the parliamentary and presidential system. He's been talking about this quite a bit, but it doesn't seem to be catching on fire as a national debate and conversation that everybody is having.
I think, this presidential system was his idea, and he went on for it and pushed hard, very, very hard for it. But one thing I can tell you is that Mheshimiwa Raila knows how to court controversy and therefore remain relevant as you run towards election. So he wants the referendum to be on the table, and then this discussion to be, and when there is no proper counter, it gains traction. It gains traction, and it can be. But if you look at what he's proposing and saying that this others has failed, the presidential system cannot fail in a year. A system must run for, let's say, 20, 30 years. That is when we can say this one is not working well. But it is not working well according to him because he wants a window through which to get power. We wish him well in the process of getting power, but you do not disrupt the country. Some of us, we want a country where our children will be able to self-actualize. We don't want a country where my brother is the president, so that is it. I know several Kikuus who can hardly eat, yet President Uhuru is one of them. We want a system that runs. I would tell, and please go and tell the court.
So you look at it as a selfish argument, debate?
Yes, especially 1 year down the road. Let us do 30 years. Right. But he knows that 30 years will find when his and he luckily has grandchildren, we can one day elect one of them.
I want to disagree, but I liked that soundbite that there are Kikuyus who can hardly eat, and Uhuru is one of them, and that is the crux of politics. It's not about your man or woman, it's about systems, it's about governance. That's why sometimes when I talk about this cost aspirations, I ask for what purpose? And people see me as a critical force in that because I come from a governance background. It's about, I'm not looking for the presidency to dispossess the guy from Central Kenya or from Rift Valley. I'm looking for the presidency to ensure that there's equitable application of law, that everybody is able to be awarded on account of merit. That's the kind of governance background we're coming from. So I'm not saying that it should not be, in fact, if we want to say we want to position a cost leadership so that we say we want to teach them, we remember the words of Kiraitu, we want Moi should go home and see how governance is rare cows. So unless we want to teach others how governance is done, you see constitutional systems flowing, Weda being a senior advisor, notwithstanding his incline, we want his ideas and stuff of that nature that we know we go beyond partisanship. Definitely some of the politics will be at play. So I think I'm looking at a mixed system. In fact, I think the mixed system would work to a certain degree because look at it now. The same parliament, and I initially was of the similar view, but now I agree with Uhuru Kenyatta on that, wants us to start summoning cabinet secretaries. Because there's that temptation yet for the members of parliament to be ministers or to have ministers in the house. So there's a way in which the mixed system will somehow work. So we're not talking about a purely presidential system. You're looking at a mixed system, something that will work even in terms of...
What is this mixed system? What is the middle ground?
Similar to what we had. Let me tell you... Let me tell you, if let's say today, if we were to go by the same results, just to disapprove his point that Raila is looking for power, still, if we're in the parliamentary system where the winning coalition appoints a prime minister, Jubilee is still the dominant coalition both in the National Assembly and the Senate. So it still will mean that the government of the day will be Jubilee. So I don't think, in fact, for me, when I look at it from a tactical point of view, as a person with a certain interest within how Kenya is balkanized, that has put us at loss because we know our members of parliament as where we can be a strong force in a coalition. We are just about 30 in the coast region, 28. Plus maybe taking the supra-Muslim bloc, we'll come to about 60. You can leverage, but you cannot get there. So I think even in terms of how I look at it from a very self-interest kind of view, or regional, or that interest, then you almost also want to ask your questions. That's the kind of system we'll have. Only Nairobi as a standalone has 18 constituencies. Half almost half of what the whole coast region has. Do you want that type of a system? So I think what we need is, I like what the Prime Minister has done in this regard. He has started a debate, or he's continued a debate, and I don't agree that he was for a presidential system. He was coerced with his coalition, or the ODM at that time during the Naivasha talks, when it was appearing. In the
interview, he didn't say he was coerced. He said he had to cede in some ground.
Exactly. Coerced in this regard. Politically, you cede ground when you're coerced. Whether you just don't cede ground naturally. You cede ground because you've been checkmated, and you want to move forward, and you've been checkmated. You see, so what you do not want to do at that point, if Raila had refused the system, as it were, it will have appeared that.
Then why not allow this system, as Weda says, more time? Why in a rush to change it?
It's a debate.
1 year.
It's a debate.
I think, Sophia, let me tell you, one omission that we have committed on the side of Jubilee, we all appreciate that Honorable Raila Odinga has a lot of energy and passion. Now, when you become a civilian and there's nothing much you're doing, that energy has to be channeled somewhere. And he has chosen to channel it in disrupting the young government. I would think, and I still think, that the court side, and you need to persuade your man that he is given an international assignment, let's say DRC or South Sudan or somewhere north, or so that it can channel, that energy can be channeled towards use.
Many would disagree with you, and many of his supporters here would disagree with an assignment elsewhere. They still believe he has a role.
Not outside the country, but he's here. He goes, he comes back. The way Kalonzo, you can see now, Kalonzo
is more focused.
More focused. That's the focus we need to believe in.
You have to be a real inspired Democrat to believe that the opposition is an institution, just like government is. So I also, that's my anxiety. You can either serve in government or serve in the opposition, and the inherent nature of every opposition in every country is to also appear to have extra energy, because they have extra capacity in government. You know, today if Uhuru and Kenyatta wanted to fly to Mombasa, there will be all the vestiges of state power. Will not spend a dime to facilitate that kind of movement. In fact, everything will be paid for. If Raila Odinga wants to travel to Mombasa, it's a cost. And therefore, so you have to appreciate that the energy is a characteristic of opposition politicians. In fact, opposition politicians must be astute, must be energetic, must have an ideological incline, must be intellectual. There must be people who are able to generate ideas, because all the time there are narratives, we want development over your politics. How do you counter that? And therefore, if you're weak-hearted, faint-hearted, you will definitely give in, because you have nothing else to stand on, no premise of ideology or systems of governance to the government to stand on. So I think for me, if Raila is the most effective opposition leader, he needs no assignment anywhere. His assignment is in Kenya, because in the strictest sense of the word, the opposition is an institution. That's why it is recognized within structures of parliament. That's why official opposition leaders, we call minority leaders, are given equal privileges and equal stature in terms of
let me just clarify. Under presidential system,
yes,
it is in terms of parties, and the opposition is in parliament or in the Senate. It is not outside. As we talk today, Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka, Kalonzo now is not a civilian, but Honorable Raila is a civilian. It's only that because he has large support base, he's using it to derail the government. And that is why we are saying...
Is he derailing? Really?
That's what I'm saying. You have to understand the opposition for what it is.
Does disagreeing with the position of the government mean
let me tell
you're derailing the government? Does everyone need to be on the same page for there to be patriotism
let me give you an example. Take, for instance, the financial markets.
Yeah.
They are so sensitive. They are so sensitive to even talk, political talk, even rumors, that when it comes back and it says referendum, you hit the work. No investor comes and says, let's wait until after the referendum.
It's the same thing Atwoli said over the weekend, and said that perhaps this push and pull between Raila and Uhuru on one hand is what is slowing down the economic growth in Kenya. But how else do you have it? Because isn't he doing what an opposition leader should be doing?
He's not an opposition leader.
Well, he's in essence.
Not an
He's a
opposition
leader. He's a leader.
That is why I say we give
Not
him an
official,
assignment.
but he
Now,
is
you are
leading
not
cause.
official, but you're actually affecting, hurting the economy. That's
So you
why
have
we
him
need
say
that
yes
energy.
to everything the
Listen,
president
We don't
says.
want him to say yes.
You want him
we
to do
want him to put country first, and that is why
Country first is saying what? Saying yes, isn't that what you're trying to say?
not derailing the country, not coming.
What
with
is
referendum.
derailing the country?
Let me tell you, Sophia, if we were to, at any one time,
Yes.
you know, the first few days, what we call the honeymoon period, everybody gave Jubilee the benefit of doubt. I was one of those who was constantly receiving whichever dignitary came from the national government, because we said, as a matter of statesmanship, we must give these men and women the benefit of, rolling out that Jubilee program.
1.5 years, it's time up.
Listen, look at this. You're trying to gag the freedoms within the NGO, civil society. They rolled back. We were just talking about it over the weekend. In fact, we were talking about it when some of the Jubilee senators were seated right there, saying, Saitoti, produce some of the produce some of the most progressive, police reform, statutes. They were approved during the leadership of Kibaki, who was an old man, yeah. But yet Kibaki had allowed a certain prevalence of freedom. I remember what Professor Mazrui told me once in private, that he's probably Kenya's political gentleman. We might not get one like him anymore. That the space was opened, it was liberalized. So immediately, if people have different characters. He's of a different breed. So that said and done, you come in in the first few weeks, months, all the reforms. The media, this and that, and this and that, the standard gauge, everything is hitting a snag, everything is in court, everything is being stopped here, so there's irregularity there, the laptop projects. So you come to realize, if you take that line of not holding this government to account, you'll have no government and no people to serve. But come 2017, the country will have been annihilated politically.
So it's important to have those
absolutely. We will do it.
Let's talk about a
Let
press
me just ask the
conference last
question.
week.
Is there anything that they have stood up and say, men, you have done well, congratulations, other than complaints, you stole our elections, you did what, you did this, which check? Sometimes you allow us
that's where.
But they said when the president traveled to the Hague for the ICC, they applauded that as he's showing us
Raila said theatrics.
theatrics in terms of the handing over of the instruments of power.
But that is the role of the opposition.
Exactly.
We're not supposed to produce a report. Our report is about accountability. It's about an alternative system of government. It's not about telling you now you've launched and after all, tell me what they have done. Tell me one particular flagship. It's just launching what Kibaki had started. Standard gauge railway, completing what Kibaki had started. So far, they've been harping on projects. The one which will have been ideally a Jubilee.
The laptops which
absolutely,
have gone
and look
back
at what
to
they did to it. This digital, this analog inside, it's chaotic. I can tell you for a fact, this is a 3310 of phone on an S4 cargo casing.
What a way to put it.
Yeah.
What are they? 10-0 on that one. Let's move on to a press conference last week. The leaders of majority in both houses flanked by the Jubilee members coming out to say the ICC cases at The Hague are now taking a political angle and they're really just out to block the president and the deputy from defending their seats come 2017. Of course, this is coming after what we had from the ICC, that the government had made public some private confidential information. Your thoughts? Is it taking that political?
The only people who are politicizing this whole process
is
Jubilee themselves. These guys have been reading their own script and running around with it. Because even if you see the advent of politicization, it was way back during the time of ODM and William Ruto, through to when Uhuru also was in government at that time, under the PNU arrangement, but it was the lead of KANU. And they kept, running after this, they create enemies. They create enemies and run after them, saying, oh, Hassan Omar has coached witnesses. Oh, William Ruto, what is it called? What do you call it? This other guy, Raila Odinga, is manipulating this process, doing this and that. as I said, I keep saying, even as I was contributing to the president's speech in the Senate, I said, you have politicized this matter so much so that the polarization in this country runs so deep. And if there have been so many preliminary applications within this ICC process, yeah? No, if you had evidence.
But is it possible, Senator, to separate politics as you make your comments?
I'm coming to
separate the politics, because this is the president and the deputy president.
I'm coming to the last point about this. Even William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta themselves recognizing it's a judicial process. They will listen to their sycophants as they yap around, but then finally submit to the authority of the court. It was not an act of magnanimity that Uhuru Kenyatta submitted himself to the ICC just recently. There are consequences for not going there. The court was asserting its authority, even if he was just to sit there for a couple of hours to humiliate him. But the court was trying to say,
so
we are
for you, the court not playing any politics.
So you have a judicial process there, and they've had orders in their favor, quite a number of them. Why could they not take this evidence there? They go and hire some nutcases coming onto your media, you know, people who...
We don't have nutcases in our media, Senator.
I'm telling you for a fact.
Let me tell you, sometimes in this one, when I see our members of parliament parading themselves in front of the media, and I don't know whether they're advising President Uhuru or they're advising ICC or they're advising Bensouda.
Yeah, somebody wonders to what end is a press conference to
I call that posturing, because a few weeks earlier, they had gone onto the podium, Kindiki, Murkomen, and the jazz, and said, President should not go. He's the president. He's the blah, 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 blah. Some of us said, Your Excellency, you will be a fugitive. Go. When the president decided I'm going, they were like, you have done very well. Oh, Your Excellency, you are the very best. In fact, wisdom. You see that kind of posturing which we thought ended with Moi?
Came back with a bang.
They are bringing it back. This is a judicial process.
Absolutely.
Where there are lawyers and the Attorney General. They should keep... Remember the Kenyans who are discharged. Ali, Mudaura, Koske. There is one underlying code with them. Not their code. Their code is evil code. They were instructed by their lawyers, shut up, keep quiet.
Let's play this judicially.
Yes. Now you go to court, when you are your lawyer advisor, sometimes if I represent you, I'll tell you, dress nicely the way you look. Then I'll tell you, now when I'm saying these things, look very sad. Some of them look very innocent, look very sincere. And when the judge or magistrate looks at you, sympathy comes and say, I understand. So they were advised, keep quiet, look innocent, do this.
These are our other ones are looking guilty.
Outside, you go there and make noise, and Ndiki Katura is doing Sonko and all these things. The result, the judges say, we will show them who has power. So they say, bring that president here. Bring him here. We want you see some of these things, because those are human beings.
I'm one of those who absolutely believes there's no reason for them to have the president there.
Just to demonstrate that,
to show that we
are making noise there,
we can still do this. Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to say this on national TV, and people should get this clear. ICC is a political court. They even look at rumors. As at now, like, you have seen the lies against the deputy president. Yeah. But one of the charges the deputy president is facing is it's called moving the population, or doing what?
Forcible transfer of population.
Yeah, forcible transfer of population, yeah.
Remember, there's a case in this country where the deputy president was found by the local court to have forcibly taken somebody's land. Be very careful. That may emerge there. And if it emerges, they will convict him. I am urging our members of parliament, especially those who are lawyers, to shut up, allow the legal team to steer the ship.
In the case.
Steer the case. Allow our presidents to look innocent, to look sincere, the deputy president to look a victim, to look, so that they are acquitted, they come. This chest thumping is making those people mad. And they should not forget that one of us, Justice Lady Joyce Aloch, is there. I'm not saying she's doing anything, but she's there. So whenever they are confused, whether Osaki or who are confused, they ask you, how is it in Kenya? You never know which side she is. I'm urging my people, let our president and the president play safe so that we have the cases thrown out.
It is not a coincidence that some of us have decided to remain studiously silent, not to respond to these matters on a political platform. Because we know, apart from the fact that they're good political garb and rhetoric, you know, we are waiting. In fact, we have challenged time and again, including within the authority of the ICC itself. Like, we want these claims investigated. You know, it's not a joke. We want these claims investigated, and we will submit ourselves to that jurisdiction. Because you see, once you are now able to respond within something that is within a framework, these are the allegations, these are the allegations, these are the what, and this is, you know, there are also issues that, you know, I remember somebody once was saying how person so and so fixed me. We were asked when and at what point. He says he came himself on this day and this day. All evidence proved that that guy was not even within the territory called Kenya on that particular day when he alleged to have spoken to him. There's so many things that that these things need to be investigated, and I'm one of those who's calling for an investigation. It's not because I think it will put this matter squarely to rest. To rest
once and for all. Yes. And we'll continue to watch as that story definitely continues to develop. On the other hand, we've seen Jubilee make a number of the leaders there, number of trips to Migori. Meanwhile, 2 have been cancelled to Kisumu. The first time it was apparently a conflict with the president's diary. The second time he was supposed to go, I think it was last week, that the leaders there feel that Raila should be present before he goes, and others saying him going at this particular time, believe intelligence reports suggest that the environment is hostile for the president to go at this particular time. What do you think is going on, Weda?
Now, let me tell you, the environment, I know that the Kisumu people are waiting to welcome the president.
Oh, really?
When he was a candidate, when he was still running, the same intelligence report said that if he entered Kisumu, he would be beaten up. The president knows that myself and Mheshimiwa Nyangolo, we went with him. He was shocked. In fact, he told us, I can't believe that people are like this, because it was welcomed and people are happy.
So what's happening? Why are they cancelling the visits twice now?
I think that somebody somewhere near the president is playing politics. You understand? As the president is planning to go to Nyanza, to go to Lowland, to go to Kisumu, I don't see any clear agenda. Now, if there's no clear agenda and he goes there and
to launch development projects, that's what they said the initial time.
Development project is a very, very vague term.
Okay.
Those people are so brilliant that they want specifics, and they are so hopeful that when they expect when the president comes. For instance, when we went with the president the other time, we were at a place called Kamas. Kamas is where they are artisans, Juakali artisans. Now there is a huge tract of land owned by a private individual but occupied by these artisans. I recall that was one of the issues that we had with the then candidate, and the candidate there standing on that Kamas place promised that if I took power, my government will look at how we can purchase this land from the owner, because we can't just grab land like that. Then we look at how we can build up the sheds for you people, organize it in a given way. I thought if the president was going back there, that would be the first to go and tell them, gentlemen, remember when I came here? Although you didn't give me enough votes, you gave me Kidogo and you gave Raila everything. But all the same now. So
what is this person near the president you're saying is trying to do?
I'm saying them. I saw somebody like Kutui making it like the president is going to hold rallies there. If it is not organized properly and it is not done properly, and the president goes there with a vague term like, I've come for development, I've come for this, it may not be very nice.
You know, one of the people also precipitating this crisis is the media. And let me tell you, I personally believed at a personal responsibility as a leader. Yes. I have an obligation to go and meet the president when he's in Mombasa County, stay with him through some of the activities as a matter of decorum and protocol. The deputy president and any other person, some ministers, cabinet secretaries will come for certain specific purposes. But I'll put it at that 2 levels of those 2 levels of politicians. Before you realize, the media is saying Uhuru's foray in Raila's stronghold. I'm like, oh, it's a foray. Okay, I didn't realize it was a foray. I thought it was an honest, sincere. But in this particular case,
sincere, it's members
it's an honest, sincere. Even if you look at it, in fact, Uhuru must go to Kisumu. I think the people of Kisumu must host the president.
So when you look at it, that does not
mean that they will vote for him. You see, he said the president was excited to see all these people during the campaigns, but none of them probably voted for him. So you see, there's a few, 2,000 or so. But
even
he probably
said, I know where your votes are, but
2,000 or something like that. So I think just because sometimes you are able to have a certain traction doesn't necessarily mean anything. And I think our people need to be pragmatic enough. If it's coming to roll out, his responsibility as president is to develop.
So you think the trips have been cancelled? Why? Because you cannot say it's been.
Just before, so I say just getting. So if you now say that's a foray, matter you're going to Migori to reach out to this person, you see.
But it's the leaders the court leaders who are saying they don't want the president to come when the former prime minister is not there because it will be seen like as though they're in bed with the government. So how is the media now the one creating a story when it's the members saying the same?
Because of the fact that you will create this perception that there's Uhuru has made a foray.
But they're the ones. The members are the ones who are worried that will be the perception
because the
when
perception.
They receive him.
Listen, that's because that's the perception always created. I've not spoken to.
So it's not the media; it's just politics.
I've not spoken to Governor Joho. Governor Joho only called me up and told me, Rais ana land mahali fulani, landing at the golf course. I'm going to pick him up. Then apparently they drove to State House. Yeah, with Honorable Rashid Bezimba. Today it's in the headlines of the Star that now Joho is warming up to Jubilee. These are the things that also probably are making anxious these political leaders from Nyanza, that they're thinking, we will be with the president for half an hour, then there will be a spin doctor out there who will say, the MPs are going to work with Jubilee on account that the president delivers one or two things. So I think the spin is what everybody is anxious about. But I can tell them for the fact that if it means we'll speak to the Honorable Raila Odinga, let whoever wants to attend that function, let them attend. It must not be perceived that people are aligning themselves to Jubilee. It's just part of being a leader. That even if those you're adverse to, your adversaries come to your turf, there is a level of decorum. I have visited many a time Jubilee strongholds, and I've been excited over the reception. In fact, if anything, people really want to listen. What is this that makes this Hassan Omar and the rest of them move? I mean, I tickle this much. So wengine wanasema tumekusikia, sisi hatukubaliani, lakini that's the kind of country we want to build. Okay. Strong enough.
You see, I think the other issue, the president in his good nature would like to work with the elected leaders. Now the elected leaders are held hostage to Honorable Raila. Do you understand? For instance, Kisumu, Raila's sister is the deputy governor, and she's the seat behind the throne, or the throne behind the seat. The governor there has no base. So if they say you will not deal with these people, then they make it impossible for the president. But the people down there would like to see the president. They would like to hear from the president. They would like to work with the president. So listening to these leaders is a mistake. The president is welcome to Kisumu. Let him come as the head of state. Whether Senator Omar is there, as the way he goes to Mombasa, whether Senator Omar boycotts, the country moves on. I would love if the president was coming. I would love if Mheshimiwa Raila was present as a gesture, because the president is like his younger brother. Although he lost to him, he's like his younger brother. He should come and say welcome, travel, and also warn his guys, the MPs who are under the table fearing him, that I have no problem, just meet the president. If they refuse, the president still has other many supporters. Okay. He will still be welcome.
Let's wind up with the NGO and the funding. You look at it as an onslaught. The government playing some dirty games. We apologize for that. One of the books is tired of this political discussion and decides to go off the shelf.
That's the book about NGOs.
It's a book about NGOs.
And it's calling out for justice. It's calling out for justice.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. It's all, you see, the book itself is calling angered by this constant attack on itself.
Yeah.
So I think it's a non-starter. I think the first time there was an attempt to this type of abortion, it was roundly defeated by members of parliament from across the board, and I believe they will do the same thing. I think for us in Kenya, a strong civil society is a very desirable thing to have, so that it builds a strong. In fact, the stronger the civil society, the stronger government, because governments become astute. And whether we like it or not, we might not have the necessary resources to bridge part of the concern or the budgetary requirements to run some of these activities. What I think we need to do is to have, I agree on that matter of transparency, that also they must be held to public account. They must tell us. We received 2 million shillings from USID. We received 5 million shillings from the Norwegians.
So it's not all bad.
So that it is transparent, and then we see the output.
Okay.
So that then it is then. So their accounts also, because they are also public organizations. They also, the same way we have our reports published by the Auditor General. You know what I spent. You know the kind of, you know my official salary, you know everything. We also need to know some of those things. They need to be made public, and that was also something I kept saying, that we pontificate in the civil society and really do not acknowledge that also we must hold ourselves to equal standards. So it will be important to know how much the civil society gurus in the national non-governmental organizations earn, because they always, some of them will say, 600,000 mingi. Yet I know some of their pay slips, they double that kind of an amount to take home. So I think we need to publish this, so that, because they're also operating in the same space that we are, public space, and they're holding us to account. So it would be nice to have models of accountability of equal station.
I'll tell you that it should be a non-issue. A non-issue in this sense. There are several NGOs that are doing a good job, are moving this country forward, but there are even more NGOs that are actually hurting this country. Remember, terrorist organizations operate through some of these NGOs. Some of these NGOs are money-minting enterprises where you write big proposals and put photographs. I know of an NGO in Kisumu County, a children's home. It is one children's home supporting almost 30 NGOs. Every donor that comes, it is taken to that children's home. They change the name of the school, whatever, so that they would wink these donors to bring money. And then this money, people buy houses in Runda, people buy houses. You can see your classmate who is doing nothing. It's just, I'm an NGO member, but you can see his wealth. Because the Wazungus, you go and tell them, these are my children, I support them, there are 1,000, Kumbe is only one. This is the kind of accountability, the kind of transparency envisaged by the Constitution that is supposed to be detailed in an act of parliament. So they are making noise because the guilty are afraid. They are already running before anybody starts chasing them. It is a good idea, those who are doing a good job. If you ask Red Cross, that we will ask you to show us how much you're getting from the donors, what you do, Red Cross will tell you, fine, bring it in the morning. But if you ask some of these funny NGOs, they will be like, you want to finish it, you want to guard the society, you want to limit the freedom. It is a good thing, and they better prepare. The sooner it is done, the better. The good ones do not fear.
The cap. The transparency is okay, the cap. You see, when you know that I buy all my clothes from a certain international line, for like you do, and then so suddenly they tell Tommy and the rest that they can no longer supply. It means they want to keep you naked. So I think what happens is that's what we think. They want to ensure that they stifle the NGOs through lack of resources to manage them.
The cap can be discussed.
No cap.
They can say, instead of
about the transparency,
make it 50.
I do not agree about the cap.
All right, we'll end it there, gentlemen. Ambrose Weda, lawyer, Senator Hassan Omar. Thank you so much for joining us on The Way It Is this morning. Always a pleasure to have you both discussing some of those big stories we've been covering. Now, if you're watching this show this morning and perhaps having a bad morning, discouraged about life, we moved away from politics now, but stay with us, because you'll meet a young man who will talk to you about a life as a teenager, having lost his siblings and his parents, and despite all the adversity, rising above that. He's now an entrepreneur, a motivational speaker, and an author. We'll talk to him when we return. Don't go away.